Human Services and Counseling, Tammy Hatfield. You're joining us in the Thomas D. Clark Reading Room of the Katie Murrell Library for Lindsey Wilson Conversations. And the way this works is you get to enjoy your beverage of choice and talk to us about a subject that interests you or is part of your area of expertise. The beverage choice you have selected for today is good old H2O tap water. And the subject we're going to talk about is Love Your Body Day, which you were the keynote speaker of here at Lindsey Wilson College. That was held on October 20th here on campus. Tell us a little bit about Love Your Body Day, what it's all about.
Sure. Well, thanks, Dwayne, for inviting me to join you. And Love Your Body Day is an annually sponsored event by the National Organization for Women, or NOW, and it's a day that really encourages us to sit back and critically examine advertising, really, and what those media images say to us. What is the implicit or sometimes even explicit message that is out there in the media when we look at images of women and men? And it's a day that encourages us to, again, critically examine the messages that we're receiving and what they say about our bodies.
The images that advertising and the media create of women, what does it say?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if you look through any major fashion magazine, you're going to see lots of images of, first of all, women's body parts. A lot of times the whole woman isn't even present in the image. If she is, you often see women presented in a very passive, submissive, not a very powerful position. And you see women in positions where they're a lot of times victimized even. You see women in sexually suggestive positions. A lot of times the media in fashion magazines may present women as the notion of being objects, and particularly being sexually available to men. And those are a lot of the images that we see out there. And we have a lot of adolescents and even adults looking at those images and thinking, this is what I should look like.
What are the consequences of these negative images of women that are created in the media?
Sure, there has been some research looking at, lots of research actually over the years, looking at what happens when we look at these images in the media. When young girls sit down and flip through fashion magazines, what's the consequence? And one of the things that we know that happens is that as a result, young girls' self-esteem can often plummet when they look at these magazines. There's often this desire to be thin that accompanies what society's expectations. Of course, thin is portrayed as the way that you should be, and especially if you're a woman, or for that matter, if you're a gay male, you should be thin. And so a lot of times if we look at those fashion magazines that are inundating us with all of this information about what we should and should not look like, we're going to see messages that suggest that women should do anything to fit into this ideal stereotype.
It's been more than 40 years since the feminist movement burst onto the American scene. What does it say that we're still fighting with those sort of negative stereotypes of women in the media?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, when we think about the first wave of feminism that occurred, that was really looking at women obtaining voting rights. The second wave of feminism came along, and now we're really in the third wave of the feminist movement. And with the third wave, what's happening is that there's a diverse group of feminist women and men that are working together to promote change in many different areas. It was interesting going back to the question that you asked a few moments ago about the impact of these media images. There was a really fascinating study that happened several years ago now in the Fiji Islands, where there was a natural opportunity to go in and take some measurements of what are people's perceptions of their body, what's their body image, what's the prevalence of eating disorders. And researchers went in and measured that prior to the introduction of television and other forms of media. And then they went back in and measured it a few months after television had been introduced. So fascinating, because what they found was that there was almost no problems with body image or eating disorders prior to the introduction of television. And after television was introduced, it went up astronomically. And so you've got all of these people with problems now thinking about their body, not accepting their body, and the development of eating disorders, which was virtually unknown to people in the Fiji Islands at that time.
What can young women especially do to combat the influence of negative images of women in the media?
Well, I think if we look at what happens to women, or girls rather, about the 6th and 7th grade year of school, right as they're entering middle school, we know that young girls' self-esteem plummets around that time. And for some young girls, that's close to the time they're hitting puberty. So as their bodies are beginning to change, their bodies are not as clearly going to fit in with this ideal. Some girls are going to start developing curves, things are going to look a little different. And that's a real vulnerable time for girls. So I think it's real important for parents, for anyone involved in mentoring or contributing to the caregiving of young girls, to really encourage them to be athletic, to feel good about themselves, to really build up their self-esteem in a way that's not just related to their body. Of course, it's important that people, engage in physical activities, exercise, nurture themselves by eating healthy foods. I think also we can encourage people to talk back to those advertisements. We don't have to listen to the message that those advertisers are often giving us. Advertisers want to sell products, right? We want to sell, as an advertiser, you want to sell a product, whatever you're promoting. And if you can if you can convince people that whatever they do, it's not good enough, then they're going to continually buy beauty products, dieting products. We know that the diet industry is, how many billions of dollars now. And so young girls and women and some men are literally dying to be thin. And, Jean Kilbourne, of course, is a nationally recognized speaker with eating disorders and body images, and she's done a video called Dying to Be Thin. So I think talking back to those advertisers and saying, I don't have to listen to this message, I don't have to buy into it.
Assistant Professor of Human Services and Counseling, Tammy Hatfield, thank you for joining us on Lindsey Wilson Conversations.
You're welcome. Thanks, Dwayne.